right, it's 4 o'clock, so go ahead and get started.
I think the microphone's off.
Is it off? Hello. Okay. I don't have to yell. That's great. So welcome. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for having me here. This is dealing with mental illness, or how I learned to dislike myself less. For those of you who don't know me, which is pretty much most of you, I'm JD Flynn. My title is Drupal Technical Architect, fancy words for developer. If you want to tweet at me, I'm at JD_Dev. If you want to find me on any Slack, I'm Dorf. If you do tweet about this, be sure to tag our gracious host, Flyover Camp here, and OSMI Help. Does anybody here know what OSMI is or ever heard of it? A couple people? Okay. Good. So I always like to start off with a big friendly greeting because it's going to get a little bit serious, so let's get really friendly. So hello.
Hi.
There, you got it. I also like to start off with a couple disclaimers because I like to cover my ass. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical professional. I'm not a mental health professional. I'm also not a lawyer, legal professional. I also tend to swear without thinking about it. So is anybody here going to be offended by that? Fuck yeah. And it's probably going to get a little bit personal here. So just heads up. Big question, why are we here? I mean today, I don't mean in general. I don't want to start philosophical debate. Today I'm here to talk with you about something that's very important to me, and I hope that it's important to you. And I hope that you're here because you want to learn something, take part in a conversation, and I'm also here to tell my story, and I'm hoping that it helps somebody out in the way that somebody who told their story helped me. So, since I said conversation, let's have a conversation, starting with you. You're going to learn a lot about me. So, I want to have an idea of who I'm talking with. How many of you are developers, designers, anything related to building sites? The majority, okay. Any of you project managers, account managers, project owners, anything like that? Okay. One or two. Any of you in HR? I usually laugh, but the more I think about it, HR would really benefit from coming to this talk. Are any of you in upper management, managers, presidents, CEOs, VPs, fancier titles? Okay, that's cool. So you might be asking, who is this guy? Well, I've been doing Drupal and PHP for about 6 years. Before that, I was doing HTML since the 90s. I had the flashiest angel fires and GeoCities that you ever saw. Before that, does anybody remember a magazine or a TV show called 321 Contact?
I do.
Oh, that's the best response I've ever gotten to that. So the magazine and the back of it, and I'm sorry, there's right where I'm standing is just really creaky.
It's a trap door.
So in the back of that magazine, every issue, there would be a printed out program, and to use it, you had to take the paper and make sure you didn't make any typos, transfer it into your editor. At the time, it was QBasic for me, Basic, and hope that when you press F5, it didn't break. Mine usually broke, so I got to learn debugging at a pretty early age. I also help organize MidCamp, which is the annual Chicago area Drupal camp. Help organize the Chicago Drupal meetup. And before all this, in a previous life, I was a paramedic and a firefighter. Also, I have mental illnesses. Why do I care? Why do I do this? For one, I suffered in silence for a long time. I was in denial, and I was afraid that admitting I had an illness would make it real. And I see a lot of other people kind of like that. It was a situation where you're in perfect health until the doctor tells you otherwise. Until you get that physical, until you get a diagnosis, you're fine. I was also worried that if I told people how I was feeling, what was going on with me, that they would treat me differently. But now I realize, something I need to tell myself, still have a hard time convincing myself of, is I'm not weak, I'm sick. I'm not damaged, I have a disease. It's not a choice, it's a condition. I hope I don't fall through this thing. All right, I'm going to talk a lot about mental illness. Otherwise, this would be a really short presentation, which I know it's the last one of Friday, so y'all want to get drinking, but I'm still going to do the whole talk. So mental illness refers to a wide range of mental health conditions that affect your mood, thinking, and behavior. There's a very large book, the DSM, which is short for Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. So I'm glad they shortened it. And it's currently on the 5th edition. The latest version, major version, was published in 2013. It originated in 1952. So it's been around a little while, not nearly long enough. It has its origins in the military, going back from veterans coming back from World War II. If you're really interested, Wikipedia, it's great. I'm also here to talk about the stigma. In case you didn't know, mental illness has a stigma around it. Surprise? But why is it? For centuries, people with mental illnesses were treated as less than. Stereotypes that people with mental illness were dangerous, grouped into the same categories as criminals, murderers, or worse, thrown in prisons, just like it. Throw them into the pit, throw them into the pit. That's kind of the way it was treated. People weren't seen as people. They were seen as their diseases. That person's schizophrenic. No, person with schizophrenia. They're bipolar, not someone with bipolar disorder. Mentally ill compared to a person with a mental illness. And it led to people using mental illness as an insult. Somebody's a little upset. Oh, they're off their meds. It's funny. Yeah. I've been off my meds. I can be funny at times when I'm off my meds, but that's me. There's also self-stigma, which is a feeling that your disease defines you and that you're a burden. And that kind of goes back to the disease first versus person first terminology. I am not depression. I am not my mental illness. I am a person with these things. Another thing that I just recently learned about is called courtesy stigma, and it's how family members, loved ones, people close to you feel shame and guilt because they're part of the problem. They think that they contribute to your illness. Oh, what did I do? Where did I go wrong? How could I have prevented this? Well, maybe you couldn't have. Maybe you could have. So, if you're the person I imagined for this slide, you're probably asking, what illnesses do you have? I have major depression, anxiety, PTSD, ADHD, and I'm one square away from mental illness bingo. And I say that because there's such a high level of comorbidity and coexistence between mental illnesses that diagnoses, once you start, you kind of collect them, which is unfortunate because in the DSM-5, they give very specific criteria, but there's a lot of overlap between things. I mean, the PTSD mimics ADHD and mimics anxiety, so we're going to treat them all and hope that something sticks. So with that, what is major depression? The definition is feelings of low self-worth or guilt and a reduced ability to enjoy life. That goes on for every day for at least 2 weeks. People can be sad, people can have bad days, but major depression really, really kicks your ass. Anxiety disorder. It's characterized by feelings of worry or fear that are strong enough to interfere with your daily activities. And it comes from that little green spot right there. You can see the laser. Your amygdala. Anybody know what that is? It's your lizard brain. It's the very basic instincts. Fight or flight, feed or breed. Is it going to kill me? Can I kill it? Can I eat it? Can I make babies with it? That's all that it says. And for me, mine is saying everything's going to kill me. PTSD. It's a failure to recover after experiencing or witnessing a terrifying event. For me, the way that this made sense was when a psychologist gave me a metaphor or an analogy. I always get those two confused, but that equates my brain to a computer. And I kind of understood that. So think of it as you've got your short-term memory, your RAM, really quick, attached right to the CPU. Things are going back and forth immediately, almost no time at all. You've got your long-term memory, kind of in the back. It's your storage. Still kind of quick, but it takes a little bit more time to get it up there. When someone has PTSD, the event gets stuck in the RAM. It gets stuck in the short-term memory, and anything can make a person relive that. Sight, sound, smell, even just thinking about it. It's not just remembering, it's reliving a terrifying or traumatic event. So once he explained it to me, it made a lot of sense. And then he asked me to fix his printer, and I was out of there. ADHD. Varying degrees of hyperactivity, impulsivity, or inattention that led to difficulty in academic, emotional, and social functioning. This got me in trouble a lot as a kid because I would get really, really bored really, really easily. I would wander, daydream, have a little bit too much energy, have not enough energy to do what I was told, never did homework, blah, blah, blah. And, that was something that was punished, not treated when I was a kid. When I say that, I've only been getting treatment for a very short time, relatively speaking. Remember when I said it was going to get personal? Well, here it comes. My normal was not normal. For as long as I can remember, I felt this way. I mean, we can spark a nature versus nurture debate, but, they both kind of have their own effects. My childhood was rough, really rough. I witnessed physical and verbal abuse. I was emotionally abused, which just can take many, many forms, and I went through a lot of them. I was left alone a lot. I had a hard time making connections because I was left alone a lot. Had very, very few friends, and those I did have, I wasn't really close to. Overweight, ugly, bad hygiene because I didn't have the proper support system. I was bullied a lot because of all of the above, and I didn't know how to handle emotions, so I cried a lot and I lashed out, and I was just emotionally unstable. I thought it was all my fault. I thought I was defective. I thought I was unlikable. I thought that I was scaring people away. I never had a sense of safety at home, so I became afraid of everything. I never had that support system, that safety net. You're supposed to think that this is your safe place. You can go there. Everything will be all right. I never really had that. But above all that, or possibly because of all that, I had one enemy in particular. Ready to meet him? The mirror. This is what I would see every time I looked in the mirror. Every day. I hated what I saw. I couldn't see how anybody could like me, how anybody would want to be around me, how anybody could even tolerate me. And kind of realized it wasn't the mirror saying it, it was me. And there's a sociological term called looking glass self, which is you viewing yourself as you think that others view you. It's a much higher level. That's a very, very high level description of it, or definition of it, but I assumed that this is how everybody viewed me, so this is how I viewed myself. And this was a norm for most of my life. Sometimes I would try to fake confidence, and it didn't work. Sometimes I would try to act like things didn't bother me, but they really, really did. Sometimes I would get angry. I was angry all the time. I was paranoid about everything, afraid of everything. I would have deep, deep valleys of depression where I couldn't do anything. I felt useless. I couldn't function. I messed up everything I touched. It just, a snowball effect of shit. I couldn't focus on anything, and I was constantly in fear of losing my job because I couldn't focus, because can't focus, I'm not doing stuff. I was also afraid that I'm going to lose my job, so I was having a harder time doing stuff, so I was afraid I was going to lose my job. And I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what was wrong with me. In addition to that, I spent a decade in public service. I was a paramedic. If you've ever met people in public service, I'm generalizing, not everybody's like this, but we're proud people. We don't get sick. We help the sick. We help the injured. We're heroes. God damn it, we're heroes. And, we're above having mental illness because we treat those people. And it's a bad outlook. And I've talked to a few friends about this who are still in the on the ambulance, and things are starting to change there, which is great. But when I was in there, it wasn't. And I can name way too many people who I worked with who died of suicide because they were also too proud to ask for help or too proud to talk to somebody because they didn't have anything wrong with them, at least until the very end when nobody could see the signs, everybody found out the hard way. Then something happened. Well, multiple things happened. I wish I could say it was a single moment, but it wasn't. It was a series of events that started off when I went to college. And I went to college in my late 20s. I went to community college. Basically, I had a goal of getting off the ambulance because I realized I didn't want to do it anymore. So I started at community college, drove up to class, sat in my car. There wasn't a test, wasn't a quiz, wasn't a speech, nothing big happening, but I could not get out of my car. I was giving myself every excuse possible to not go in there. Just my lizard brain was saying, it's going to eat you, you're going to die. Something's going to get you, you step out of here, the floor is lava, nothing is going to go right. And, I was trying to rationalize it. Oh, I think I left my oven on. Oh, I think I left the microwave open. It was a full-blown panic attack. It's not the first one that I ever had, but it's the one that I finally questioned. Fast forward a couple of years, I changed careers. I got into development and I started hanging out in online developer communities. And I started realizing that the developer community is pretty damn inclusive and pretty damn awesome. And it was very understanding because I saw other people talking about it on IRC or Slacks. Hey, I've got this going on. Hey, I've got this going on. And it was really a great feeling to know that I wasn't the only one going through this. I also had a health scare, which is great. TLDR, I found a lump where there shouldn't be a lump and I got scared. Good news, it was nothing. But I started reevaluating a lot of things. And part of that was accepting that I needed help. You know, not just my body health, but my brain health. This was the hardest part. I saw a lot of other people living very happy lives, not going through the same things that I was. People didn't get as angry as easily as I did, and I got angry pretty easily. People weren't affected by everyday things like I was. And I had an epiphany that maybe everyone else wasn't the problem, maybe it was me. So it's one of those situations where if everywhere you go smells like dog shit, maybe check your own shoes. So I put the blame on everyone else, it was me. For a lot of people, including myself, this was the hardest part. All the signs were there, just screaming at me, hey, you need help, but I couldn't see them. I was constantly afraid. Crippling fear of everyday things. Like I said, my lizard brain, just on high alert. I would have the same reaction that somebody should have when they're getting chased by a mountain lion as I walk into the supermarket. Social situations in general were paralyzing, so that led to me canceling plans a lot. My best friend, my stomach, would always be there for me, and I just said, you know what? I don't feel so good. I'm not going out tonight. Stomach's acting up again. He's being a little jerk. And I was paranoid about absolutely everything. Because of that, I was not a happy person. Again, back to that lizard brain. Fight or flight, feed or breed. If I can't eat it or make babies with it, I'm going to run away or fight. And when I say fight, lashing out. Hey, you jerk, asshole, call names, yell. This was usually a misunderstanding. I did get angry and hateful sometimes, but I was never actually, I hate you. It was more, I'm protecting myself, go away, go away. Then I realized I'd been suffering and there was something that I could do about it. And if you've been paying attention, a wise Jedi once said, and I should have taken that advice from a very young age. So what happened? I got treatment. I take medication. I'm a huge fan of better living through chemistry. I see a therapist. I find outlets. I'm active in the Drupal community through the meetups, through mid-camp, teaching where I can. I do this. I go around, and I enjoy it. It's a creative outlet. I start the conversation. So we're having a conversation. I know I'm kind of monopolizing it for right now, but this is a conversation. It wasn't easy though, because there was a frustrating period. In case you didn't know, the American healthcare system is not great. I was able to get into a therapist pretty quickly, but my therapist could not prescribe medication. They said, you need to be on this. And I said, great, sign me up. And, well, I can't because you need to go see a family doctor. I don't have one. Well, called one up, tried to get an appointment. 6 to 8 weeks later, finally get in. But that was a terrible, terrible gray period between them. Knowing that there is something within reach that can help me, I have to wait until somebody says, yeah, come on in. During this time, I attended a talk in Chicago at a PHP meetup by a guy named Ed Finkler. Do any of you know him? Heard of him? He's Funkatron on Twitter, all the things. I'll talk more about him a little bit later as well. It was a talk that inspired this one. He was there to answer questions. He was there to say how he went through a lot of the same things. And it just really, really moved me. And helped me realize something extremely important, that we're not alone. Since I got diagnosed and since I got rid of the stigma from myself, I realized I'm not alone, which means we're not alone. Nobody is the only one going through this. Put it in a PHP metaphor. May have different variables, but the interface is kind of the same. Does that work? Okay. I realized I was afraid because of the way that people viewed me. And I don't feel that way anymore because of organizations like OSMI, which I will go into OSMI a little bit, I think 2 or 3 slides from now. Since I got treatment, I'm no longer ashamed of who I am. Before, I wanted to hide in shame just because of how I felt. I didn't even know, I didn't have labels for what was going on, but I didn't want to be around anybody. I didn't want anybody seeing me like that. But now it's part of me. I'm not too proud to admit that I need help anymore. I don't have the deep valleys that I used to, which, not to say they aren't deep, or I don't have deep valleys, but they're very less frequent than before, and for the most part, they're not as deep. And if you're familiar with depression, it's not just down. There are some higher levels. I was never quite to the bipolar level where, extreme swings, but I would have very, very dark days. But then I would also have some very, very good days where I can accomplish a lot. Same thing with ADHD. It's not just inability to focus. There are periods of hyperfocus where I can, stare and do something for hours on end, and time would just pass by. Those times are great. I miss those times, but the fact that I am more leveled out and have more control over what I'm doing really, really outweighs those great times. My anxiety's gone down, but it still shows up occasionally. I'm much more comfortable in social situations. I'm still introverted, so after this I'm probably going to go hide for a couple days. And I don't have nearly as many anxiety attacks or times when my brain is telling me that I'm going to get mauled by bears if I walk into the store, unless there's a guy running out saying there's bears in here. So now, I work with OSMI. OSMI stands for Open Sourcing Mental Illness, and the main goal is focused on erasing the stigma around mental illness, specifically in the tech community. It was founded by Ed Finkler. He started kind of doing it in 2014, and then in 2016 he officially got the nonprofit certification, and since then it's just kind of grown tremendously. He was the only one going around talking about this because nobody else was. Now we have 20 to 30 speakers around the world. We put out handbooks for workplaces. We want to open up the conversation. We want to make mental illness not be stigmatized. Obviously, stronger than fear, erasing the stigma. And we've got a bunch of volunteers, and it's great. I'm not here to sell OSMI because we're completely volunteer and donation based, but it's a great organization. And also, I can tolerate this guy a little bit more. He can tolerate me. And that should be good. I also realized, I keep saying this, but we're not alone. I say this in general, but more specifically in the tech community. We're not alone. But why tech specifically? Why us? It was suspected for a long time, for I'm willing to say centuries, creatives appeared to be more prone to depression and anxiety. I mean, if you could look at some of the most creative people ever, there are stories of how they had the downsides as well. There used to be a forum called Devpression or Devpressed. The moderators of that either kind of fizzled out or were absorbed into OSMI, so now it's the OSMI forums. But before, that was kind of all there was to go on, seeing all these other developers typing up stuff saying, hey, I'm going through the same things. There are studies as well saying that intelligent and creative people tend to think over situations more than others. A lot of people can let go of events or not look for the cause-effect connection, but for me, I replay events over and over again. All the way down from why isn't my code working? Why isn't this loading the right way? Going up and down, trying to figure it out. But it doesn't stop there. It's why did this happen to me? Why is this going on? Bad thing happened. Why did this person die? And just replaying it, living it over and over again. And that can lead to feeling sad, hopeless, depressed. And that's kind of the way a lot of our brains are wired. There's also this thing. Anybody heard of imposter syndrome? Yeah. High level, it's a feeling you don't deserve to be doing what you're doing. I have a really hard time dealing with it. One of the hardest things for me to do is take a compliment. I usually laugh, say, no, you got the wrong guy. I have a hard time asking for help because I always thought that if I ask somebody for help, then they're going to see me as the fake that I really am. I would have a hard time saying no to stuff because if I say no to something, then, oh, you got something better to do? But now I realize that asking for help isn't weakness. I guarantee that there's somebody in this room who knows more about something than you do, and that's a conversation starter. That's not showing weakness. And it's okay to show that you have limits. Nobody's going to know everything about everything. If you ask for help, if you have those limits, if there's something you haven't done, or if there's something you even forgot. I was joking earlier, but I have to look up how to do a for loop half the time because I've got so much other stuff in my brain from Drupal that I forget the basic procedural stuff. And that's okay. Having limits is okay. I'm also working on saying thank you instead of laughing in your face when you say something nice to me. All right, I've been going on for a while now, so I want to ask you all some questions. Would you tell someone with glasses or contacts to try looking harder? I see a lot of glasses in here, so probably not. Would you ask someone in a wheelchair why they decided not to walk? A lot of head shaking. Would you tell someone with diabetes or a heart condition to stop taking their medicine and snap out of it? No, kind of silly, right? Let's do some Mad Libs. Would you tell someone with depression to try being happy? Would you ask someone in a panic attack have they considered trying harder to not have anxiety? Would you tell someone with diabetes or a heart, someone with ADHD to stop taking their medicine and just try focusing? Have you really thought about it? We live on the internet, and this is a lot bigger than it was before. So, I apologize for that, but the top says this is an antidepressant, the bottom says this is shit. This picture of Prozac, I disagree. I don't need pills to be happy. I do. And this one, again, sorry for it being cut off, but what if I told you you don't need antidepressants if you lift? Personal favorite. These all say the same thing. Treating it like a decision to feel this way. If I had the choice, I wouldn't. It's saying you don't need help. It's something you can just will yourself out of. I can vouch for the effects of medication. Obviously, I'm standing on the stage talking to a bunch of strangers, except for David. But, I think meds are doing good. But everyone is different, and what works for me might not work for you. Maybe the gym does work for you. Awesome. Great. Don't shame me for taking meds, and I won't shame you for CrossFit. There's few side effects, but the benefits greatly outweigh those side effects. Yeah, I get a dry mouth, but I'm also not crying in bed. And we also have our own meme. If you can't make your own neurotransmitters, store-bought is fine. So how do we erase the stigma? The best way is to be stronger than fear. And by that, I don't mean beating your fear at arm wrestling. I mean starting the conversation, not being afraid to talk about it, listening, let people know that they matter, not being ashamed of who you are. And if you have a mental illness, you're not damaged, you have a disease. Be respectful too. This is a big one. Not all disabilities are visible, not all cuts bleed. Try to be respectful of what you say or how you portray diseases. Because being sad is not the same as being depressed. Being organized is not the same as having OCD. And I say that one specifically because that's a big one that you hear a lot of people say. But I did a talk recently it was an online talk, but the woman who went before me, I think that I pissed somebody off because she was absolutely amazing and I had to follow her, but she was giving a talk on how she deals with OCD. And the way that she put it is, it's not just feeling like I would like that to be clean. It is, imagine you were deathly allergic to blueberries. You touch it, you're dead. But your brain is saying, if you don't eat that blueberry, everything you love, everything you care about, everyone that you know will die. That's what your brain is telling you. That's a compulsion. That's how it feels to her. But if you do feel they have a disease, get treatment, talk to somebody. And I did it, worked for me. Anecdotes are one thing, but facts help show that I'm not completely full of shit. So one of the other things that OSMI does is we do a survey every year. We open it up to various tech communities, US-based, and we get varying responses year to year, and it's ongoing. We collect all the data, we keep it in Kaggle, and which, if you're not familiar with Kaggle, it's basically a GitHub for data sets. So it's open source, anybody can look at it, anybody can do what they want to with it. So these are the results from the 2017 survey. With a little help from 2016, there were some questions that I thought were pretty valid that didn't make it into that one. For 2017, we had about 800 responses. The survey was made available to several different communities, and all of these are self-reported. So I like to preface it with that because, I'm not saying that somebody was telling people, oh, this is what you have. So question, would you bring up a physical health issue with a potential employer in an interview? 23% said yes, 37% said no, 40% said maybe. Not saying that you have to bring one up, but if you need some kind of accommodation, it might not be a bad idea. Same question, change out physical to mental. Would you bring up a mental health issue with a potential employer in an interview? 5% said yes. An overwhelming 69% of people said no, absolutely not. That's almost twice as many. From the 2016 survey, do you feel that being identified as a person with a mental health issue would hurt your career? 10% said, I don't think it would. 2% said, no, it has not. 41% said maybe. 39% said, I think it would. 7% say it has. 12% said no, in some way, shape, or form. 12% think that it wouldn't hurt their career. This is something I worry about every time I give this talk. I send out a resume, somebody Googles my name, they're going to find me doing something similar to this, and all my cards are going to be out on the table. And if they hire me then, awesome. It's kind of freeing as well, knowing that anybody can know anything about me in this aspect. Also from 2016, do you think discussing a physical health issue with your employer would have negative consequences? Only 4% said yes. Pretty significant no's, so not much to worry about with a physical health issue. But a mental health issue, do you think that would have negative consequences? 23% said yes to that. That's over 5 times as many people said yes. They think it will have a negative consequence. From 2017, have you been diagnosed with a mental health condition? Again, this is self-reported. The US average is about 20% and about 800 responses. 43% of respondents said yes. That's a pretty damn high number. That's twice as many as, or twice as high as the regular population. Going off of that, do you think you have a mental health condition? This also includes the people who are diagnosed, so yes, I think I have because I'm diagnosed with it. 43% said yes, possibly 19%, so that's well over half people think or have been diagnosed with a mental health condition in the tech community. That's a big percentage. And that 19%, possibly, I don't know why it's only possibly, why they haven't gotten treatment. Maybe their insurance doesn't cover it. Maybe they just don't know how to go about it. But I think that people should get treatment in some way, shape, or form. But what does these mean? In general, it means we're afraid to talk about mental illness, especially with our employers. But it also means we're not alone. We're afraid that stigma around it, that we talked about before. We're afraid that being honest will have negative consequences. We're afraid people will change their opinion of us. If word gets out, then what are people going to think of me? As somebody with anxiety, worrying what people think of you can be really scary, especially coworkers. And some of our minds go straight to the worst case scenario. Has anybody ever had an email server down, you try to log in, password's bad, try to log in again, your password's bad, and then you start sending out your resume? That happened to me one time. It was just, okay, they sent your fired email before, or they shut it down, and they shut it down before I checked it. No, it was just a server problem. It's kind of a binary mind with me, where if it's not good, it's horrible. If it's not great, it's bad. I'm working on that gray area in between, because there's a lot of steps in between there, but my initial gut reaction for everything is great, terrible. We're also afraid that we might get sent to the HR department. And how many of you talk with HR on a regular basis? A couple waving hands, and so-so. So this could be a good or bad thing, depending on your company. I don't. I couldn't pick out my HR in a lineup if I had to. I had a situation a couple years ago at a previous job, and there's a reason it's a previous job, where I had started getting treatment. I realized that this stuff was going on with me, and hey, maybe I should take a day off and just recuperate. So I thought that I'm going to be brave. I'm going to just tell my boss, direct supervisor, somebody I deal with on a daily basis, I have depression. I need a day off to recover. This is why. And did that. A couple hours later, after I took the afternoon off, get a phone call from HR. Hey, we're going to start a work plan for you, a performance plan for you. We're going to dictate what you're going to do at every minute of your day. And that is not the way to deal with it. One, it took me a lot of courage to talk to my boss. Two, I don't know my HR rep one-to-one, so now I have to just disclose everything to the HR representative, somebody that I barely talk to, somebody that I barely know. And that's even more stressful. Now, in 2015, 17.9% of all US adults, that's 43.4 million adults, had some form of mental illness within the past year. That's a lot of people. But why should a workplace care? Well, let's put a dollar sign on it. Depression alone, just depression, impacts an estimated 9.5% of the American adult population. That's just like 3 pages of that 2-mile high book. With that, it's estimated to cause 200 million lost work days each year, which can cost employers up to $44 billion with a B dollars annually. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of work days lost. So if you're the person I imagine for the slide, you're asking, what can we do? Well, best thing you can do is find a way to create a culture of inclusiveness in your workplace. And there are various ways to do that, but it's got to start from the top down as well. For me, if an employee feels more comfortable being open or saying, hey, I need this time off, then it's going to save money. Let's put dollar signs on it. It's going to save money. At that job, I would do very, very little for days because I just couldn't focus. And because I couldn't focus, I would do even less because I'd be more anxious that I was going to lose my job, blah, blah, blah. And, a vicious cycle. Then I'd get angry because I couldn't function. I'd get afraid because I wasn't succeeding. I was going to get, called out on it. Somebody's going to figure out that I'm not putting out as many commits as I should be. I'm not writing as much code. I'm not solving as many problems. So if I would have felt more comfortable saying I need a day off, instead of that 36 hours on my timesheet that was maybe 4 or 5 actual hours of work, I could have taken 8 hours of PTO and had 32 hours of billable work that actually had something to show for it. Another thing that we can all do, I've done it, you should do it, it's awesome, take the OSMI 2019 survey because every response helps. It's not a short one, it's about 20 minutes to get through, but it is really important and it helps us direct our efforts to what we're going to be doing. Get the OSMI handbooks, and I have this in lowercase because I found out the hard way that bit.ly is case sensitive, so it has to be lowercase. We have 3 handbooks. They're DRM free, so if somebody buys it, or they're free if you want them. We want to get it out there, but we're a nonprofit, completely donation based. There's 3 of them: guidelines for mental wellness in the workplace, which is kind of created a culture of inclusivity. Guidelines for executives and HR professionals, and guidelines for employees. Now, all of these are based on the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. They're checked by lawyers and psychologists to make sure that we're not saying bullshit and telling somebody the complete wrong thing to do. And they really come in handy. Seriously, please take the survey. Every response helps out a lot. The more people who take it, the bigger our data set, the better our statistics. So we are very, very fortunate here because we have a great community, especially the Drupal community, but in tech in general, open source more specifically. We have a great community. That's kind of our thing. 43% of the survey respondents said they have diagnosis. They definitely have mental illness. Basically, that means we're not alone. I can't say that enough. We're not alone. We're more than usernames, which is something that events like this really, really help us remember. We're not just ones and zeros. We're real people. We're interacting, we're talking, having lunch together, solving problems together. It's great. For those of us with mental illness, we're not damaged. We have a disease. It's not a choice, it's a condition. And together, with a little work, we can erase the stigma. I do have a list of some resources here. OSMIhelp.org is the OSMI website. Psychologytoday.com is a Drupal site, but they also have a really great therapist finder if you're looking for one that can get very, very granular to, if you have a religious preference of your therapist, if you have a certain issue that you would like them to be specifically trained in, if you have certain insurance. I mean, it's very, very, very granular. It's great. Suicide Lifeline, if you're having a hard time, if you're thinking about it, don't hesitate to call. If you're having an emergency or know somebody who's having an emergency, call 911. As a paramedic, I'm sorry, we might be jerks, but we really do care. Most of us. I want to thank you all for letting me talk with you. I really appreciate it. I have a survey at JDF-survey, it's a bit.ly there. If you want to help out to sponsor this talk, forget the first one, donate to OSMI. It's 501c3, tax deductible, greatly appreciated. Use promo code JD for an awesome thumbs up from me. I don't get anything back from it, I just, we're completely donation based. And now we don't have a ton of time left, 3 minutes. I would like to open up for questions. Yeah.
How have the people that have been closest, I guess, in proximity, what stood out about how they've been most helpful as far as like showing support and encouragement and things like what can a person from the outside looking in do?
Are you talking about personal level or professional or, I guess.
I'm talking like both types of levels.
Okay.
My husband was recently diagnosed with depression and anxiety, and so it's an interesting time.
Yeah.
As far as trying to figure out what is actually helpful and what is our normal? Like I don't.
Okay, I'm going to repeat that back in a very shortened version just so that the microphone will pick it up. But if I'm understanding the question is how can somebody be more supportive of somebody with mental illness to help out, to not be a burden or poke and prod. For me, I think that a lot of it has to do with language and just being open to help. It's not, don't ask what's wrong, because that puts kind of a label on it that something's wrong with you. You're defective. We don't often think about how words can be taken, but words can be taken a very, very bad way, even subconsciously. And not what's wrong, it's what can I do? If it's somebody close to you, what can I do to help? One thing that I highly recommend everybody takes, if the opportunity is there, is there's a class called Mental Health First Aid. And it's usually done at cost or for donation. And if you think of first aid, treat it and treat it, it's pretty much the same thing, only for the brain. It's not training you to diagnose, because unless you're a psychologist or psychiatrist in here, nobody diagnoses. It's teaching how to recognize symptoms, how to deal with symptoms, deal with crises, possibly de-escalate, and it can really help in the workplace as well. I think that everybody should take it, but definitely supervisors, HR representatives, because there's so many things that you can recognize. Like you could recognize burnout if you've been trained in it. You might be seeing somebody who's working extra hours, or just burning the candle at both ends, and they are about to just spark out completely. And if somebody next to them or above them recognizes it and say, hey, slow down a little bit, I've seen this happen before. As far as personal, just be supportive. Ask what can you do, what do you need, and as somebody who went through that, especially if somebody's just getting on medication, those first 6 to 8 or 4 to 6 weeks of my antidepressant were living hell. Because my body was adjusting to having all this new serotonin and it didn't know how to react. I was thirsty all the time, like dry mouth, just absorbing water like a sponge. Extremely moody. But then people around me started noticing about that 6 to 8 week mark, you're really evened out. Something changed. I didn't notice it for myself. It wasn't like a light switch. Just one day I popped a pill and things were good. It was a gradual build-up. But now that I'm there, I'm glad I'm there. And I've talked with other people who have been on the same medication that I am. They've had very similar responses and experiences. And unfortunately, a lot of people give up after 2 weeks because the dry mouth, the whatever side effects there are. But it does improve over time. Did that answer your question? Or?
Yeah, that was very helpful. And
Okay.
we definitely can agree that that 4 to 6 weeks was rough, but it's
Yeah.
so much better now.
Yeah, and for me, like I said, I didn't notice a change. It was people around me who were like, you would have thrown a couch at that before, and you're just shrugging it off? Yeah, kind of. It's all good. Any other questions? We're at 4:46 now. Yeah,
Can you move back one slide so I can see?
I
the
can.
survey link?
sorry. Yeah.
Is the OSMI survey focused on the tech field, or is that for anyone?
It's primarily for the tech field, because that's where our efforts are. So kind of a high level of Ed Winkler, it's scary how parallel a lot of us in OSMI, how our lives kind of stack up, going next to each other. But he also wasn't diagnosed until later in life. He was in the tech community. He noticed people, going through the same kind of things. He decided to start speaking up about it, and really noticed the disconnect between not knowing what treatment is available, not knowing what a person has available to them through the workplace, somebody with mental illness not knowing what their rights are, whether or not they can speak and say, hey, I've got this going on, because I was terrified. Like I said, not all cuts bleed. Not all disabilities are visible. I'm not rolling around in a wheelchair. I'm not, I don't have a cracked arm. It's all up here and you can't see it. Yeah, I'm saying I need a mental health day. That's not just me wanting to go fishing. It's not just me wanting to play Skyrim for 12 hours. That's because I cannot get out of bed, function, and if I do, and somebody says the wrong thing to me, I'm probably going to blow up. But yeah, so completely tangential to that. Yeah, it's primarily to the tech community, because that's where most of our efforts are going, just because the research hasn't been done in this community until around 2014. Anyone else? Yeah.
In your experience, when would you personally disclose to HR? If you do, what mental disorders you have?
So legally, you don't have to disclose what things are, and that's in the ADA. And the question, sorry, I didn't repeat your one. For anybody listening at home, the previous question is OSMI more tech focused? This question is, when would I disclose to HR that I have mental illness? So the ADA says that you do not have to disclose what your disability is. Legally, all that you have to say is, I have a disability. And what they have to do is, okay, what kind of reasonable accommodations can we make for you? And there are a number of different, everybody's different. I'm not going to say what works for me is going to work for somebody else. For me, though, this talk is kind of my disclosure. But I would not, for me, before I was doing this, I wish that I hadn't said I have depression, because that sent a whole spiral of, well, we're going to micromanage the shit out of you until you end up quitting. But in hindsight, I wish I would have just said, I have a disability, I need a day off. And then they wouldn't have done anything. But on the other hand, I wouldn't be working towards erasing the stigma. Everybody's different. It depends on your comfort level with where you are, what the culture is like where you work. I can't give you a direct answer, especially now that everybody's that I've got a few things going on up in my head. But yeah, it's really completely your call.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, thank you all. Thank you so much for coming.